Welcome to the Mindful Educator podcast. This is a place to come if you're seeking calm amongst the chaos, transformation and personal shifts, inspiring conversations, and practical advice to help you build a more balanced and fulfilling life. Come join me, your host, Victoria R. I am a mum, teacher, coach, mindfulness instructor, multi-business owner, and city-turned-country girl, and I'm sharing the lessons I wish I had known sooner. Let's take this journey of personal growth and meaningful change together. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Mindful Educator podcast. So I am joined today by Susan Hughes, and I'm really excited for this today because Susan is actually an ADHD parent coach and educator, and she's based in Perth. And I know that there's probably going to be a lot of questions and a lot of good information that we're going to get out of today's interview. So I can't wait to get started. So thank you, Susan, for joining me.
I'm very excited to be on as well. And I'll warn you now, I can talk for a long time about ADHD, so you may have to shut me up.
That is fine. I love that. So, Susan, before we go any further, I thought, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about kind of how you've ended up in this line of work, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. So I guess I'm a real oddity in that I used to be an accountant.
I love it.
I worked in Dublin, middle management, 20 years in the accountancy industry and finance. And we moved to Australia with a 2 and a 4-year-old. And my husband had been the main caretaker at home in Ireland for 3 years. And we moved here, and the joke was, right, I'm going to take over now. You go back to work.
Yeah.
Gosh, parenting is hard.
Yep.
I was like, oh my goodness. This is like at the end of the day, you're like, okay, I've kept them alive. What else have I achieved? Like, it's
Yep.
just parenting young children is such hard work because there's very little to show for your day. And I was used to ticking a box at the end of every day, oh, done, 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 and there's nothing. So
Yep.
that was kind of the start of me recognizing, gosh, this is hard. And I was sent two wonderful, beautiful boys. And my youngest is incredibly reactive. He's what you'd call that really defined, independent spirit. And
Yep.
I discovered, I already knew it, but we used to clash terribly. I had a really, really, he triggered me all the time because he wouldn't do what he was told, wouldn't do what he was, meant to be doing. And one morning I slapped him in temper because I was trying to get him into the buggy to get my oldest to school.
Yeah.
Um, and he turned around and he gave me such a look of hatred that I remember going, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to learn how to parent differently. So that was honestly the start of my journey in
Yeah.
recognizing I needed to learn parenting skills I just didn't have. But ironically, I already had trained as a coach. And I assumed I'd be a finance coach or a business coach or anything like that. And I met a lady who was a parent coach. So that was when I first realized that the parenting needs actually the coaching skills I already had. So that was
Yeah.
kind of what I kind of, so my first kind of recognition that the coaching skills I had, I could actually start using at home. But the first part was working out how to regulate myself.
Yeah.
Because and anyone who has highly reactive children will recognize this. If
Yep.
you react, you just make them worse, and the whole thing goes to crap really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And that actually creates that negativity in your child's brain. So you have to learn to regulate it. So that's one of the things I teach as part of my program. It's like
Yeah.
not just about ADHD, but also about how, as a parent, you have to learn to regulate ourselves because it's
Yeah.
so challenging. So much behavior looks from an ADHD looks like defiance, looks like they're not listening, looks like they're not trying, looks like they don't give a damn, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, and that's such a key piece, isn't it? Because yeah, like if we're yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it can be really hard learning to regulate
Oh,
yourself too.
really hard, really hard.
Yeah.
And then in my journey, my son was finding school hard. And through a series of events, we discovered he had dyslexia. And then it turned out he had ADHD and attention as well. And I
Yeah.
remember going into his year 4 teacher going, right, so we have dyslexia and ADHD is diagnosis. How are we going to help him? And bless her for her honesty, she told me she didn't know.
Yeah.
So I went, right, okay, I'll go back to university and find out.
I love that. I
So
love being like,
that's what I
I'm just going to go
did.
back to uni then.
So that's actually what I did. I went back and I did a master's of education, and I was just again through a series of events. You look back and things, and somebody else was guiding me here, just worked out, and I
Yeah.
got to do the research. on the benefits of coaching parents who are raising kids with ADHD. So as a result, I have a really unique in-depth knowledge of ADHD. I combine that with coaching, and I'm a professional coach, as in I'm a member of the International Coach Federation, which, you know, requires supervision, every 3 years. I'm a proper coach, as they say.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, really passionate about the science of coaching. So
Yeah.
that combined with ADHD, but also combined with my lived experience means I really get it, and I'm really passionate about helping parents because we know that if parents can learn how to support their children, that child will then have the magic life they're meant to have. But it's a very different pattern if the child isn't supported.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love that that you're out here doing this because I know um there's I don't know I love your opinion on this basically. So obviously we're hearing a lot more about people being diagnosed with ADHD, both
Yeah,
children and adults.
yeah,
What is your
absolutely.
take on this? Like why is this all of a sudden, why are we hearing more about this? Is this because people are becoming more aware? Is it because ADHD is becoming more prevalent? Like what's your opinion regarding this?
Well, if you think that the worldwide average is 5 to 7% of people have ADHD, and if
Yeah.
you were over the age of 35, you were not diagnosed as a child, I think that kind of is the answer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I see so much with the families I work with is the child gets diagnosed, and I would never say it to a parent, but I can spot it a mile away. And sure enough, halfway through the program, they're going, I think maybe I can see where it's coming from, Like it's hereditable. We know it is. It's in families. And the
Yeah.
problem is, it can be a really hard journey to navigate life, not understanding your brain ticks differently. And that's
Yeah.
ultimately all it is. I mean, I genuinely believe the ADHD brain is fabulous and creative. But if you
Mm,
don't get that support in your formative years, it can create a lot of negativity around it because you don't understand why your brain ticks differently. And you don't understand why things are hard for you that are easy
mm.
for everybody else. And I think that's the most important message we can give children growing up. It's okay to be different, but you will need support on certain things.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you've said it's just your brain working
Yeah,
differently,
because that
which
is
is
all
so
it
true.
is. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah,
mean, we giggle in our family. My youngest was the neurotypical one, but as he's got older, it's just that his neurodiversity hasn't impacted him as negatively getting through school as it did for my oldest. And it's just
yeah,
his personality made him overcome some of the weaknesses that potentially can go with an ADHD brain. I find it
yeah,
fascinating, really do.
yeah. I love it. So for those that maybe are listening, I'm like, oh, I don't really understand what ADHD is. Like I keep hearing it, everyone keeps going
Yeah,
on
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
How
yeah.
would you explain what it actually is?
Ultimately, it's a particular subset of neurodivergence, and but it's quite significantly different, and it presents in three different ways. It presents as either pure inattention, which is what my son has, and
Yeah,
ultimately what it looks like is a child who has great difficulty focusing, great difficulty staying on task, and great difficulty getting started on something. So that whole procrastination often goes with the inattention. The hyperactivity and the impulsivity then often go together. And that's the one we're more familiar with. It's the one the media represents of the child jumping around the place, rolling. And it was always little boys. We're now understanding that girls are impacted by it as well, but it looks very different in females. And that's
Mhm.
really quite new knowledge and new research because, of course, all the research was all done on males. Now the
Yeah,
research has been done on females now, and we're seeing significant shifts in how it is and much more understanding, thank goodness, of how it looks for females and the whole impact of hormones, etc. But ultimately, the underlying condition is, and we call it a disorder because unfortunately you need a diagnosis to get support in our Western society,
mm,
even though it's not really a disorder, but it is a recognition that the brain, as a result of the way it ticks, the more you understand yourself, the more you can get support for the bits that are difficult. But the difficulty, it's ultimately an executive functioning delay. And for young children, they are severely impacted in the school environment because typically it can be a 30% difference. So by the time a child gets to upper primary school, their peers are 11 and your child's executive function is only around 8. That's a massive difference in terms of meeting the expectations of the school environment and of society, in fact. So then you can get shame creeping in, you can get self-doubt creeping in, self-esteem gets damaged, and the trajectory for that is obviously can be very negative.
Yeah, especially when that's already, those tween teen years are already quite
They're difficult
fragile
anyway,
as it is.
absolutely, without a doubt. And modern society, without a doubt, is putting more pressure on our children, without a
Mm.
doubt. And so when you add in an extra element like ADHD, it's just another thing for them to navigate.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you mentioned before about how female can be present quite differently. So what's coming through about all that? So what have you
Um,
noticed?
it ultimately it's that for a long time they honestly thought females didn't even have ADHD. Where we're now realizing that little girls are much more socially aware, so they're going to be more focused on the sociability of presenting themselves well. So essentially, it's an element of masking in that
Yeah,
they will do the right thing in the school environment, but you might get them home and they're absolutely emotional wrecks and they're awful to live with and they're awful to deal with. And unless you understand that that's what your child is actually dealing with all day, it can be very challenging. The other aspect of it is hormones. Huge, we're now discovering massive impact of hormones. So obviously for a young female, puberty, and then you've
mm,
got having a baby and you've got postpartum and you've got menopause and you've got perimenopause, and all of those are really impacting ADHD symptoms.
yeah,
And to the extent that they can really exacerbate them. But even if you look at the menstrual cycle, that week before, essentially, symptoms can become so exacerbated that the normal stimulant medication actually stops supporting it. So it's
yeah,
really,
right.
really quite strange, and it's really new information. And it really is important that you read up about it if you have ADHD as a female yourself, because often our professionals they don't have an opportunity to stay on top of the research as
Mm.
much because they've so much to cover. So it's really
Yeah.
important to inform ourselves as ADHD community to understand what's going on.
Yeah. And so I guess this is probably also why, as you mentioned, like some women are now realizing later in life, they're like, oh, okay. Maybe a few things are coming through, especially as you're going through these different
Yeah.
phases and stages as
That's
well.
exactly. It's the executive functioning loads as they get, a lot of women do beautifully until they have the first child, for example, and all of a sudden they're managing your child's executive functioning plus yourself, and it just becomes too much. A
Yeah.
lot of young girls, they might get through primary school and it's not a problem. They get to high school, things become really hard because executive function is too much. They might get through secondary school or high school, and that's fine. And then they go to university, and it's like this. It's like
Yeah.
different levels of executive functioning load can really impact.
Yeah. So interesting. So if there's people listening, they're like, okay, so how will I know if I've perhaps got some signs or if there's any indication, like what are some things that straight away you can be like, okay, this could be a thing to kind of keep an
There,
eye
there
out for.
actually isn't anything, Victoria. There really isn't.
Interesting.
Like because it's the symptom is so vast
Yeah.
that, and you can literally have six people with ADHD who all present completely differently.
Yeah.
But the underlying condition is that basically the brain is seeking stimulation all the time. So even the inattention brain, what's actually happening is the brain is seeking so much stimulation. It's been like likened to you're standing in a room, there's 50 television channels all on and you can't actually home in on one different thing. So that's
Yeah.
where the inattention comes, and the hyperactivity is kind of reacting to all this stimulation and needing stimulation. So ultimately, what I would say, I would still say go to your GP
Yeah.
and have a conversation with the GP, because no matter what you're doing, you need to get a referral from a GP. Now, I know our wait lists are really long at the moment, but in WA, we're actually doing something great. We're training 15 GPs at the moment on a pilot scheme, and they will actually be able to diagnose ADHD. So we are slowly making changes, but
Yeah.
obviously, it's going to take a while to make a massive change. But I would say still go and talk to your GP. If you're going to be seeking information, you do need to make sure the information is valid. So I don't
Mm.
necessarily would say, trying to diagnose yourself from TikTok is probably not the best way to go. But by all means, if something resonates, then do some further research. That's probably
Yeah.
what I'd say.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. And I love that you've brought up about the waiting list as well, because that was a question that because I did ask a couple of friends that perhaps, have dealt with ADHD and stuff, and I know that that was what they were asking, like, how do you find a pediatrician when so many of them are closing their books to new people? And it's great that obviously we've got these GPs getting trained up, but what do we do in the meantime? Like, where do you go?
And
Like,
I
how do
guess
you...
one of the aspects that I'm very passionate about, Victoria, is if you are waiting for a diagnosis, there's so much you can do as a parent. and obviously that's the gap I'm trying to
Yeah.
fill, where I actually have a parent training course. And in
Yeah.
that, I teach parents what ADHD looks like, and also the practical elements of what are you actually seeing on a day-to-day basis. Because what I found myself, when I really understood ADHD, I was able to really stop and go, okay, what does he need right now? Because so
Mm,
much of it is about understanding right now your child hasn't got the capacity for what you're asking them to do. And if you've pushed push that, depending on the personality. So I have a freezer and a fighter. If I pushed it with my fighter, it would just escalate and go to crap really, really quickly.
yeah.
But if I pushed my freezer, he would just retreat further and further into his shell. Both of those are actually damaging their mental health for the long term. So that's why
Mm,
it's so important to understand when your child doesn't have the capacity to do something, and to recognize it, and not like kind of further put more pressure on them. And that's
yeah.
why it's so important to understand about ADHD. And there are lots of resources out there. I'm not the only one. And
Yeah.
I honestly think that as a parent of a child with ADHD, learning more about ADHD is definitely a first step. And as I
Yeah.
alluded to, learning what triggers you, and learning
Mm,
skills to manage that, which is where mindfulness comes in. So I don't necessarily teach meditation mindfulness, but I teach how to be a mindful parent. Because
yeah.
ultimately, if you don't recognize that you're actually getting emotionally dysregulated as a result of your child behaving, then you actually can't make a choice to support the child. So, first of all, the first thing is just walk away. Be aware
Yeah.
of it and just take that breath. I joke that timeout doesn't work for our children, but it works for parents.
Yeah.
You know, it really is.
Yeah.
It's probably the best strategy to initially. And I know it's what I did at the very beginning. I felt
Mm,
myself become dysregulated, just walk away. With a conversation, I'm just going to take a moment for myself now.
yeah. And what are some like really simple things that I know obviously you can't give everything away, but what are some simple things that parents can do apart from, the regulating themselves and all the rest of it? What would you suggest when they're starting out
Well,
to help
what
with their kids?
Victoria, any parent who's dealing with will recognize this. Getting out the door in the morning is probably the
Mm,
most stressful time, and the
yeah.
second one is getting them into bed. So, I on my website I have a 5 steps to calm parenting, and ultimately what it's about is recognizing that for young children, if say take an 8-year-old, there's an expectation that an 8-year-old would know how to dress themselves, know how to have breakfast, know maybe how to put the basics of packing a bag. But
Yeah.
your 8-year-old is actually only about 5, so they actually may not have those skills yet. So it's about recognizing that they potentially don't have the capacity yet. So you have to scaffold it. So what I teach is that in a morning routine, you'd have a visual representation of 4 things the child needs to do. Get dressed, have breakfast, put shoes on, and pack lunch, whatever
Yeah.
you've decided the 4 things is. The beauty of that, it forces us as parents to stop and think about what are we actually asking the child. I have met families and they have a list like 50 things long in the morning, and then they wonder why it doesn't go well. And they're doing it from the best of intentions. They're trying
Yeah.
to support the child to achieve what needs to be done. But if you can't teach a child to do stuff if they haven't got the executive functioning skills yet. And that's what we know about the ADHD brain. That frontal cortex part of the brain is developing slower. They do get there. I have a 22-year-old, he's doing brilliantly. But gosh, when he was 15 or 16, and you're looking at him going, actually, okay, remind yourself he's only 12, he's only 12. And it's incredibly frustrating. But
Yeah.
the secret is to recognizing that's what's going on. Drop your
Mm,
expectations, support your demands, or support what you're expecting them to do, and then conversations like, "What's going on? What's stopping you doing this?" That is such
mm.
an important part.
Yeah, just understanding what's actually going on in their
Yeah,
their head at the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I love that. And what about when you're looking at from a teaching perspective as well? Because obviously some teachers do listening, like how can they help support children in the classroom? Because
yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
as you mentioned at the start, the school system isn't really designed too well for our neurodivergent children.
yeah, yeah,
How can
absolutely.
they kind of ease that impact on them a little
And
bit?
funny you should say that, Victoria, because I actually have an educator course on my website,
Oh, I love
which
that.
I've designed purely as a resource for teachers who are looking for it, because ultimately, it's actually the same, but it's different, if you know what I mean, in the sense
Yeah.
that you still need that really deep understanding of ADHD, and unfortunately, there is no in-depth knowledge given around ADHD. So
Mm,
if you're a teacher of a classroom of 30 kids, you may have 3 with ADHD, 2 with dyslexia, 2 with autism, somebody else with anxiety. There's so much going on in a classroom
Yeah.
for teachers. They don't have that toolbox of what to pull for, going, okay, I understand what's going on here. I know what to do. So that's why I've designed the program, because ultimately that's what they need.
Yeah.
But like, it is as simple as understanding more about ADHD. But the difficulty is, for a lot of teachers, they have to actually go and seek that information privately. And let's face it,
Mm,
our teachers are often mothers themselves and carrying an awful lot. I mean, I have
yeah.
so much respect for teachers. They're doing an incredibly difficult job in an environment where they really aren't being resourced the way they need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's good to know that, yeah, that at least there is that support
Yeah,
out there. Because I think this is a big thing that's missing as well, is that just
absolutely.
support.
100%.
Like people are
Yeah,
struggling. They're
yeah,
struggling
yeah,
to know what to do. They're struggling to know who to come and see. So it's great that there's
yeah.
people like you that are out there and we can hopefully spread the word.
Yeah, and Victoria, we talk an awful lot of medication. Yes, stimulant medication can be really, really effective and really incredibly powerfully effective for some kids, but at best it's going to cover 8 to 12 hours. There's another
Yeah.
12 hours for the parent to manage, regardless of how effective stimulant is. And it's a journey to find the right stimulant. And I've never met a family who do it easily. It's a difficult journey, but and it's difficult because you actually need to trial and error different types of
Mm,
medication to find the right one that works. And so that can be feel very confronting as a parent. I'm trialing and erroring on my child, but
yeah.
ultimately that is how it works, and it can be incredibly effective. But there's still an awful lot of extra hours that need to be managed. So that's
Yeah.
why I think that understanding of ADHD and that parent training is so incredibly important.
Yeah, because yeah, I was quite curious about your thoughts in regards to medicating because I know that can be quite controversial as well. Some people are
It
very
absolutely
against
can.
it,
Yeah,
some
yeah,
people are
yeah,
totally for it.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, what's your perspective? Do you think it's just up to the individuals and the families, or what's your...
I think it's really important to work closely with a professional,
Yeah,
but that journey as I say, the journey of finding the right medication has to be done with a professional. However, there is eons of research to show that there's no long-term impact, negative impact of stimulant medication. In
yeah,
fact, there is some positivity in terms of the recognition that if a child takes stimulant medication early, potentially they can learn executive functioning skills earlier because their brain is more aligned to learning skills, which makes sense to me. But
yeah,
really, what I always suggest to parents I work with, tune into the child. If the child is adversely being impacted by their ADHD symptoms, then potentially exploring medication is the right way to go. However, if, for example, they're getting to primary school and it all looks good, and it's not a battleground at home as well, then potentially you can delay that decision, if because it's a difficult decision at the end of the day. My son didn't
yeah,
go on medication till high school.
yeah,
That leap to high school, just the executive function was just so hard for him. I obviously was able to support him quite well at home. So
yeah,
there was a lot of strategies we were able to put in at home. But when it got to high school, the demands for the executive functioning are so large in
mm,
terms of that leap to being organized and being able to prioritize and being able to plan, being able to stay focused for 7 hours a
yeah.
day. Like it is really, really hard on a kid with ADHD.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for most kids, full stop, let alone
Correct. Correct.
adding
Yeah.
that extra stuff
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in terms of like adults trying to decide for themselves, for those that have been diagnosed with ADHD, like, yeah, I guess what would you suggest to them to kind of focus on when they're trying to decide if it is for them or not?
And again, Victoria, I think it really is a conversation with whoever the professional is they're working with.
Mm,
Um, because the whole irony of ADHD is, for a long time they thought adults grew out of it. And you can have ADHD as an adult and be operating really, really effectively and actually not have a huge amount of negativity to it, because it's very much the environment you're in.
yeah,
So entrepreneurs are often are there's a lot of ADHD people who are
yeah,
entrepreneurs because it suits their personality,
yeah,
because they're able to lean into their strengths, and when they're successful they can hopefully buy services to do the stuff they're not so good at.
yeah,
So do you know what I mean? So like
yeah,
those ADHD adults can be really, really successful. However, some ADHD adults, if they've had a really negative experience in school and they're actually carrying a lot of negativity around themselves and self-esteem issues, then not understanding why life is so hard for them, then medication can actually be really impactful. And I've met many adults who have literally said it's changed their lives. So I would say it's definitely something worth exploring.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that recognizing that there's wait lists for adults as well. And it's also incredibly
Mm.
expensive.
Yeah, okay. So, so we do have the wait list for the adults too. So it's
Yeah,
not just
because it's private. It can only be
Oh my
private.
goodness.
There is no public system for adults.
Yeah, wow, okay.
And
So
it's expensive. Medication is expensive.
yeah. So while they're waiting perhaps to kind of find out what's going on or see someone, are there any alternative therapies that you have known that have been successful in helping with ADHD? Anything like, whether seeing a naturopath or a chiropractor or anything like that? Has anything kind of come through
Yeah,
on that?
so I'm just going to remind you, I work with
Yeah.
parents. My focus
Yeah.
is supporting parents with
Yes, that's
ADHD as
fine.
opposed to adults with ADHD.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are lots of, but again, honestly, it's research. It's doing
Yeah.
your research, figuring out what works. There are ADHD adult coaches who can be incredibly useful. Like the objective of a coach is to help you achieve your goal. And if you've
Yeah.
got a coach who understands ADHD, then obviously they're going to be able to break down tasks, give you strategies that lean into the ADHD brain.
Yeah.
It really is about exploring, learning more information, and also, I'm a great component of using ChatGPT. Like, use it and
Yeah.
ask them who are the good people who are giving information. Who can I lean
Yeah.
into that will give me evidence-based strategies? Because also
Yeah.
there's an awful lot of crackpots out there as well. So it's really
Yeah.
important to make sure you know who you're leaning into. And I'm
Yeah.
very passionate about that. I really believe evidence-based strategies and education is so incredibly important.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact that um, you've got that education, you've got that evidence behind you as well. Like, what exactly, how did it work at uni? What did you go back and actually do there? Like, how did it, I
So
know,
yeah, basically, I wrote a thesis essentially. It was the
yeah,
hardest thing I ever did, Victoria, as an adult. Oh my God, I cried so
I
much as an
can
adult
imagine.
doing that thing. I'm not a writer. I
Oh,
found it very
wow.
challenging. But
Yeah.
the depth of knowledge that I had to explore was like, you basically, you read 10 research papers and you summarize it into one line. Like, that's kind of what you're doing when you're doing research.
Oh,
So as a
amazing.
result, I'm really grateful for the experience because I learned so much. And then
Yeah.
remember, I had my prize project at home, my son, in other words.
Yeah.
I can joke about it now. He was my prize project, but like, he really was. And I just literally learned something. I'd go home and go, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So you kind of like, yeah, you had the theory there and then you had the
Yeah, yeah,
practical.
and the lived experience definitely is my point of difference in the sense of I really do understand when people are talking about stuff because I can
Mm.
so clearly put myself back when my child was in primary school or when when my son went to high school, I literally was in despair, going, "Oh my God, I don't want to do high school again." But that's what it
Oh,
felt like I had to do to support him.
yeah.
It really, really is challenging for them.
Yeah.
And it's very much personality based, so you've got the personality and then you've got
Mm.
ADHD, which can exacerbate potentially some of the negativities of the personality. And our job as parents is to teach our children how to lean into their strengths. I
Yeah.
really believe strength based is so incredibly important. And our schools are not good at that sometimes, particularly in the primary schools. There's too much focus on reading and writing, and I appreciate that's very important. But my child
Yeah.
had dyslexia. That absolutely wasn't a strength of his, so we had to work really hard to find other strengths for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And with, I know, yeah, with your experience, I guess, with ADHD and working with people, have you often found that there may be other neurodivergent things that have come through as well? Do you find that it's often just the one, or do you find that, oh, there's actually a little bit of this and a little
Oh
bit of
no,
that?
yeah, no, it's very much recognized that the ADHD brain very rarely comes on its own.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that would be, they call it comorbidities, a lot of things that would be diagnosed together.
Interesting.
Dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, all of those, they're all
Yeah.
specific learning difficulties. Autism is very common. Anxiety is very common. They're probably the ones I see the most.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's other things like opposition defiant disorder, which is where that really strong personality, and that's very much environmental. It's so incredibly important as parents to understand what's going on so we don't exacerbate it. Because I look at my youngest and know he'd be drinking and drugging if I hadn't learned how to parent him. He was so strong-minded, and
Yeah.
thank God we learned how to parent him well, and he's turned out beautifully.
Yeah. Oh,
He's,
that.
he's still defined and independent, but
Yeah.
he's fabulous. He's channel it the right direction, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
that's
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 it,
the
isn't
thing.
it?
It is about
Yeah.
teaching them how to channel it.
Yeah, and what a credit to you guys as well, the fact that you've actually gone to do all this as well. I mean, that's huge. Not everyone would do that, and the fact that you did and you've kind of are now able to help others, that's amazing, Susan.
Thank you. But Victoria, honestly, that day when my son turned around and gave me such a look of hatred, I
Mm,
remember going, "Oh my goodness, I have no idea how to parent this child." And it
yeah,
was just such a moment. Thank God I saw it. Like
yeah,
literally utter hatred in a 3-year-old's eyes. And going, "Oh my
yeah.
God." Like he was just keep slapping him and he was just going to become so obnoxious. Like just,
Mm,
and then, I'd look and another 2 years, I'd be wondering what's wrong with this child.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, I know you're not meant to slap your children, but let's be honest, we've all done it in temper,
yeah.
particularly when they're little.
And the fact that you're able to go, oh, well, like that
Yeah.
was kind of obviously your turning point
It
for
really, really
you.
was. And I'm so
Yeah,
grateful I saw that moment, the
yeah,
recognition that I just had to learn how to parent differently. And
yeah.
for
And
me, it was about emotional regulation because in Ireland, it was perfectly acceptable to be passionate and be shout and roar at people. And nobody ever told me actually how to manage this very passionate personality to temper it so I don't frighten people.
yeah, not everyone like is okay with that.
No, I do find in WA they're not okay with it at all, actually.
But what a
I've had
great
to learn
thing
to
for you
temper
to,
myself.
yeah, but what a great thing for you to learn as well. And I think this is like parenting, honestly, it exposes so much, doesn't it? It exposes
Really
all
does.
your flaws, all your
Really,
vulnerabilities,
really
all those
does.
things come
Yeah.
to the surface. It's,
That's
yeah,
exactly right. And that's exactly what I go through with parents, Victoria, because I see, I really call ADHD extreme parenting. We need skills that neurotypical families don't seem to need quite as much because our kids are struggling so much on a day to day, and
yeah,
depending on their personalities, they come home and they vent to us because we're their safe space, and we don't have the capacity to understand what's going on or capacity to make room because we're actually the adults in the room, then we just can't help them. And that's just so awful for everybody. And the
yeah.
fighting and the shouting, and then often what will happen is when that child becomes a teenager, they make poor choices because they pulled away from the parents because that relationship is fractured. And then they're looking for their peers for make decision making. And that's never going to go well.
No, no, no. And I think, yeah, I suppose those of the parents that may be listening that do have children with ADHD and they'll be like, oh, okay, maybe maybe I need to try and support myself a bit better in this
Yeah,
regard.
that's
And
exactly right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
how would you respond? I know there's, for lack of a better word, a lot of cowboys out there saying that they are experts on ADHD, all the rest of it. What would you say for parents to look for before they start working with someone who claims that they're a ADHD expert or this or that or everything else? What would you
Well, I'm
suggest?
I'm I'm obviously, I'm very evidence-based focused.
Yeah,
So to me, you look at where the qualifications have come from.
yeah,
You look what they're saying, and um, often when you have a conversation with somebody, you have a better sense of whether they're being authentic or not. And I
yeah,
think it's about trusting your instincts. But it's really important to make sure that you understand where your knowledge is coming from in relation to
mm,
ADHD, because there is a lot of crap out there. And
yeah,
unfortunately, there are professionals who don't know as much as I do because I'm in a unique situation. I eat and drink ADHD. If you're a professional dealing with like 50 different ailments, then you can't have
mm,
that level of knowledge.
yeah,
So as a result, as parents, the more we can inform ourselves and the more we can share that knowledge and then explore it with professionals who work with both in education and in the medical world. Because
yeah,
I have found that when you go to teachers and you explain to them, this is what's going on, this is what I think my daughter needs, then and if they try it and it works, they're like, I've never met a teacher who isn't grateful if you can give them a strategy
mm,
that will actually help.
yeah,
Because ultimately teachers, I've never met a teacher who doesn't care. They have different
yeah,
capacities, but they all care. And
yeah,
so it's how we lean into that, and having that partnership approach is incredibly important. In primary school, definitely, but even in high school,
yeah,
you can work with individual subject teachers where the child is really struggling. That's how I used the worst subject. I'd work with them first. It was always English. It was always English for my poor child, bless him,
yeah,
because of dyslexia. English was really hard for him.
yeah. I
So
can
it's about,
imagine.
sitting down with the teacher and going, okay, how can we actually support this child, and bring the child to the meeting as well. The earlier you involve your children in meetings in the school with the teacher, the earlier you're teaching them self-advocacy, the earlier you're teaching them that it's okay to ask for help, because that's one of the things as an ADHD person you need to learn. You have amazing strengths, but goodness, you have weaknesses as well, and you need to find a way of scaffolding those weaknesses.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. I love that you've said that as well. Because yeah, how many times do we make decisions for our children without actually having them involved in the process?
Yeah,
Whereas,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
how can we help you?
Yeah, yeah. And I think the one powerful piece of knowledge for somebody who has ADHD is to understand how your brain works. Because I genuinely do think the ADHD brain is amazing and creative and fabulous, but it can have weaknesses. And the more you understand this is what I find hard, what can I do to help that, then the easier your life's going to be.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, where can people find you to work with you, and what do you offer in terms of your services to help those people?
So I've actually just reinvented my program. I was running it by term, but in the last 2 terms, I ran it over a semester. So basically, I run a program that is going to run over 2 terms, so like the first 6 months of the year. It'll
Yeah.
start next February, and ultimately, in that, I offer a combination of live coaching, live group coaching. That there's no more than 10 families in a group. I
Yeah.
deliberately keep it small so I can give that individual approach. And then I also give education as well. And the education, I do live education sessions, but it's also available by video, because it's dependent on people's personalities. Some people are quite happy to look at a video. Other people would actually prefer to be presented at live. So I do
Yeah.
both.
Oh, that's good. And this is something that you offer to people
Yeah,
everywhere
I
or
have a,
just
I
in
have a
particular?
wait list at the moment, so you can literally go on my website, which is susanhughes.com.au.
Yeah.
Or you can email me, susan@susanhughes.com.au, and I can put you on the wait list, and you'll be the first to know when the enrollment starts. I just need to work 2 dates.
Yeah. I love it. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
2026 almost
yeah,
there.
I know it is a bit like that. It's like, oh,
I
goodness,
know.
we're in November already. I better work through some dates.
And if there's something that you would love everyone to know about ADHD, what would you want everyone just to know about it?
You know what? I think it's as a parent recognizing their behavior is not a choice.
Yeah.
Because if you see it as a choice, you get very, very frustrated as opposed to understanding they're actually not choosing that behavior at the moment. They just don't have the capacity to do whatever the expectation is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
bit hard, doesn't it?
But it's very hard sometimes, but it's so
Yeah.
important to see it. Your child is not choosing to be naughty.
Mm,
I honestly don't believe there's any such thing. I don't think
yeah.
any child ever chooses to be naughty. I
Yeah.
think that
And
if they're dysregulated or they're shouting or whatever's going on, it's a form of communication and they don't have the way of expressing it any other way.
yeah, well, that's good. Thank you. And if you could leave our listeners with just one piece of advice, what would that be? Just to put you in
Gosh.
on the spot.
Um, well, I'm going to say as a coach, I don't actually give advice.
I love
So
it.
I guess what I'd ask you to do is stop and recognize when you're being dysregulated, when you're feeling overwhelmed, and give
Yeah,
yourself space, because you can't be a productive parent when you're overwhelmed.
awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate you jumping on and chatting with us this morning.
Yeah,
And
it's been lovely chatting to you.
yeah, and like I said, it's such a fascinating topic. So I love that people are able to head to your website and yeah, obviously get in contact with you if they need that further support because I think it's something that's definitely needed. So
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity of chatting.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Mindful Educator podcast. I would love it if you could help get the word out, either by leaving a review, sharing on your socials, or telling your friends, or even all three. If you would like to get in contact, head to my Instagram at the.victoria.r or my Facebook, Victoria R. My DMs are always open. Thanks again for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.